So hello, welcome to the first set of notes. This is Algebraic Properties. Our objective is to use commutative, associative, and distributive properties to simplify expressions. And we're going to combine like terms. Now if you wanted to follow along in the book, you would look at Chapter 1, Section 7. So again, if you check the book website, that's where you would go. So let's look at the first part. What are we trying to do? Okay, so let's define some of these properties. Let's get some ideas here. So the first thing we want to look at is, let's look at the commutative property. Now, commutative. The idea there is that we are commuting. That means movement. Things move around. Keep that in mind. So there's two parts to this, addition and multiplication. So the first two properties we have addition and multiplication. If you're pre-AP, I expect you to tell me commutative property of addition and commutative property of multiplication. CP, as long as you're telling me it's commutative property, I'm okay. But the idea, notice here, we're saying A plus B is the same thing as B plus A. In other words, 2 plus 3 is the same thing as 3 plus 2. Multiplication, A times B is the same thing as B times A. What that means is 2 times 3, which is 6, is the same thing as 3 times 2, which is also 6. See, these are kind of like, I know, mind-blowing, but they mean something very simple. Go with that. The other property is the associative property. The associative property means associations. You group things together that belong together. Change associations. Associations, members, and things like that. So, for example, the addition property of associative and the multiplication property of associative would tell you A plus B plus C is the same thing as A plus parentheses B plus C. In other words, 2 plus 3 parentheses plus 4, I could add 2 plus 3 first and get 5 and then add 4 and get 9. Or I could have said 3 plus 4 is 7 and then add 2 and get 9 also. Multiplication is the same thing. Now keep in mind, commutative property changes the order. It moves things around. The associative property changes associations. Who is going to be together? You know, is it A and B together, or is it B and C? I can't put A and C together unless I change the order, but you know, you could even do that. But think about it like that. All right? So let's look at the third property, distributive property. The distributive property basically tries to get rid of a parentheses. There's one number outside of a parentheses that's multiplying two numbers that are being added inside the parentheses. Okay, so algebraically it would look something like this. A times B plus C is the same thing as A times B plus A times C. In other words, you're going to make sure you multiply A to both numbers that are inside the parentheses. So make sure you understand that. You want to be equal, fair. We're not prejudiced here. You want to multiply the A to both numbers. If you leave one of them out, they're going to feel left out. They're going to feel, why are you doing this to me? Okay, so do that. Or you can go in reverse and take away A from both of them. You can find a common factor, and we'll talk about those later more. But your main concern is more about the top one, where you're expanding to get rid of the parentheses. Okay. So, for example, let's look at an example here. Let's do that. Okay, let's simplify this. 5x, 5 parentheses x plus 3 minus 7x. We're just going to simplify. There is no solving here, but there is some ways to simplify. Now again, if this is going too fast, always make sure that you stop and pause, okay? So, obviously I was doing this and I got caught by a bell. So here we go with that. Just 1 second. Okay, so essentially every so often I might be recording in the middle of class, as you can see, and the bell might go off and oops, okay, so let's just go with that. Alright, so what do we want to do here first? We want to simplify. So we want to get rid of those parentheses, and the way to do that is to multiply. I'm going to say 5 times the x, which just becomes 5x, and 5 times 3, which is 15. The property I did use for that was, again, distributive. So be prepared that you have to tell me distributive. Tell me what property I use to say do something. Now, what I can do here is I want to move things so that certain things that look like they're together should be together, next to each other. So the x's look like they want to be together. So I move them together. And this is using the commutative property. So I move the 7x over. Notice it's a minus 7x. The minus stayed with it. And the plus 15 stayed there. Then I can do technically the associative property, but we'll call this combining like terms, which means I'm putting those x's together as one group, and when I do that I can combine them. 5 minus 7 is negative 2x plus 15. So I did that by combining like terms, which we might also say that's the associative property. So what you can see here is that I basically have simplified the expression, and I demonstrated what steps I used, and I even told you what steps I had to use. Okay, so, but let me also explain a few other things here. Let's talk about what's a term, because you're hearing me say like terms and terms. Terms are parts of an algebraic expression that can be added or subtracted. Let's rephrase that. There are things that are like, if I put together, say, bunches of numbers with pluses and minuses and variables, there's terms are the different parts that are separated by a plus and a minus. Okay, so what are like terms? Well, like terms are the ones that I can combine, like saying 5x plus 3x is 8x. You've been doing that since you were like in kindergarten, when you started going, little Johnny had 5 apples, little Susie had 6 apples, and when they joined their apples together to one basket, they had 11 apples. Combining like terms. You didn't go, little Johnny had 5 apples, little Susie had 11 or 6 oranges, and when they combined them together, you had 11 apple oranges, or no, you had fruit. So the idea here is that we can combine them and still say that they're the same thing. Now notice there it does say raised to the same power. X and x squared cannot be combined. I can't say 3x plus 4x squared becomes 7x cubed. No. If there's a little extra thing there, don't combine them. Also, let's talk about what is a coefficient. A coefficient is a number in front of a variable that multiplies the variable. So when I say like 5x, I'm saying there's 5 times x. Whatever x may be, just realize right now those are placeholders. Variables are placeholders. I could have used smiley faces if I wanted to instead of x. I could use question marks. A variable just is a placeholder, a symbol for a number. The coefficient is the actual number that multiplies the variable. Okay, so let's look at something else here. This was from our simplified thing. All three of those numbers, the 5x, the 15, and the 7x, are terms. Notice they're separated by pluses and minuses. Okay, and then I could say the 7 and even the 15 are coefficients. So, and I could also say the 5 and 7x are like terms. So it's very important to know what those are. And then from there I could even say, don't forget, if I have something like this, 5x plus say 7x squared, those aren't like terms because one has an x, one has an x to the second power. That's not the same thing. Okay, only combine like x's and x's, y's and y's, x squared and x squared, smiley faces and smiley faces, whatever. All right, so my last example, and then I'm done. And then y'all can be working on the assignments or whatever, and so hopefully this won't take too long. Let's just, okay, so we have here 4 parentheses x plus 3 minus 2 parentheses 3x minus 7. What's the first thing you're going to do? Well, the first thing you're going to do is distribute. So you're going to say 4 times x is 4x. 4 times 3 is 12. You're going to say negative 2, that's key. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x. Negative 2 times a negative 7 is 14. So I'm treating those minuses like a plus, or I'm like a negative, but then multiplying. And then I'll come back to the sign when I'm done. Then I'm going to do commutative property, which means I'm going to move the x's to the x's, the numbers to the numbers, so I can kind of join and have the right associations. So 4x minus 6x, and then plus 12 plus 14. Okay, that was my commutative property. So I've distributed and I've done commutative. Now associating, I know by association the x's can go together. I can combine those terms. I can know by association 12 and 14 can go together, and I can combine those terms. So when I do that, again, combining like terms, or call it the associative property. That is the associative property. It's allowing me, the associative property is allowing me to combine those terms. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. 12 plus 14 is going to be 26, positive. So plus 26, and I've simplified it. Have no idea why I put that extra little line there. Okay, so there you go. That's the notes for today for algebraic properties. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask. Send a little note to me on Edmodo or let me know in class. You will have an assignment to go over this, and you're expected to do it by the end of class. So be prepared to walk in at the beginning of the period and get ready to work. Okay? Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed your first lesson.